So there's a lot of people who are talking about AEW Double or Nothing, and they're saying that this is definitely a lot of goodwill for AEW. And then also, then you look at like WWE and how they're not doing really well. Like a lot of people are saying things about John Cena and like the title reign, his final title reign is not doing good. And then also just saying stuff about like The Rock, just not being there when he's part of a story. And then also just saying, okay, now you're going back to John Cena, you're going back to The Rock. It's not like it's not a forever thing really. What about the new talents and other things like that. So WWE is struggling a little bit, but AEW has been struggling for a couple of years. So and I don't want to go over like the issues about that, but there is an opportunity for a lot of goodwill for AEW to make Hangman Adam Page the world champion at All In, and that needs to happen. That the first thing I want to say is that there are three options. There's Will Ospreay at Forbidden Door, but then again, it's almost like as some people are saying, why would you have Ospreay win when ultimately he just lost a really big match at this pay per view, and Forbidden Door is not one of their. Usually they do like the least amount of pay per view buys because a lot of the times they have a lot of Japanese wrestlers. So it's ultimately like, you know, why would you kind of like not have your championship victory? Why would you not change a champion at like your biggest show of the year? It kind of reminds me when Bobby Roode. What happened with him was that he was gonna win at Bound for Glory, but they changed it, and then like I think like the week after or the show after they gave it to James Storm, which not a lot of people watched, and then they gave it to Bobby Roode the week after. So it's ultimately like you're pissing on your biggest moment. So you can't give it to Will Ospreay because it's almost like why wait until Forbidden Door. The next big thing is Darby Allin, and he's a bad choice for a couple of reasons. Number one, the guy looks like a high school freshman. Like he doesn't look like a heavyweight champion. The next thing about Darby Allin is that he's been off climbing Mount Everest, and it does tell the fans two things: that if you do what you want in AEW, if you take off a lot of time, if you are there for a paycheck, if you take advantage of Tony Khan's kindness, you automatically get to be the heavyweight champion. I think, quite honestly, yes, Darby Allin should be the heavyweight champion, but not now. I think that he's ultimately a great, that contract. He's good for that contract that they have, that you win it All In, where anytime, anywhere you gain the championship. He's good for that, but I don't feel that, holding off until, Wrestle Dream or another show would be a good option now, because you're just holding this off really, and then ultimately you need to really solidify All In really. So I really think that you want to have like a WrestleMania type of moment, and just remember, I think they have like 18,000 tickets sold. So do you really want all the fans there to be like, hey, you know what, do you want more people to go into All In and buy tickets and be like, oh well, we're gonna disappoint everybody by giving to John Moxley for, just really give it to John Moxley and have him win and create like a deflating feeling. And then I think the next issue with Darby Allin is that they create a lot of bad will with Moxley winning and the Death Riders beating down Bryan Danielson. So do you think that having another show in Tacoma, Washington, or the Washington area is a good idea? When you pissed off the crowd, a lot of people will be like, oh well, like fuck that, really. They'll be happy that Darby wins, but it's just gonna be like too little, too late, really. So I think that Hangman should win, and I'll talk about the reasons why he should win. I think the first thing is that you want to have a good WrestleMania type of main event. You want to send the people home happy. You want to have like people all excited and saying yes, it's going to be a lot of great stuff. And ultimately, they need to learn, and this is why MJF is right, which is you got to watch the competition. And when you watch shows like WrestleMania, like 41, you kind of look at how with John Cena in the main event winning, it was predictable, and ultimately it was kind of deflating, really, as well, really. So do you want to kind of learn from like WrestleMania and be like, hey, let's just do a counter attack, let's learn from that, and let's actually just have Hangman win, send people home happy. And I also think that another thing was that one of the reasons why people got into AEW was because of great wrestling and great storytelling. And they've kind of dropped the storytelling aspect of it. And I think that the biggest storytelling that they can do is that Hangman realizes that he is not alone. You see the Death Riders come down and try to fuck everything up. Then you have Sport Strickland come in, you have Will Ospreay come in, and then you have like even like the Dark Order or other people that he's been friends with over time, even like Kenny Omega, and then they're all hoisting like Hangman up, and they're saying like, hey man, you know what, you're not alone, you're not suffering alone anymore. You have friends, really, and then the power of friendship. That there is a story within that. I also feel that the other story that they can tell really is that how when he was champion, Hangman was champion, he was very, very overlooked because of CM Punk. So he was like, because CM Punk was a shiny new toy, really. So you can kind of like have a title reign about him proving himself, and you can even do something where he holds the title all the way to All In at Wembley Stadium, and then you get to Will Ospreay, and then you get Will Ospreay go down a storyline of, hey, I tried to do everything right, I lost my way, really, and then he takes the Don Callis family, and they go after, um, um, Hangman Adam Page to turn Ospreay heel, and then over time he realizes that that's not who he wants to be, and then he kind of says to himself, you know what, I lost myself just like Hangman, and I get what I fucking deserve, and you know what, and I want to gain the title, I want to do it the right way, so you can have Ospreay down that road of wanting to be a company man, not getting what he feels is deserved, really, and changing his heart, but turning his heart back, really, and then Hangman being like, hey, you know what, that's all you need to do. All you need to do was just like in the story of Job, really, is that sometimes when you suffer, you got to keep doing the right thing, and that's true with life and everything like that. That's a very human theme, and that's what good storytelling is. It's human themes, and we all resonate with this. We all have our lives. We In order to be successful, you usually work at something for like 10 years, and or a very long time, really. And then there are people who get ahead by doing the wrong thing, really. Like life is challenging, and it takes a long time to get where you want to be. So I think that that's a good story for Ospreay. That's also a good story for Hangman. The power of friendship, the power of redemption, and the power of what, I want a second chance with that title to show what I can do, really. So I think that's kind of the story you can tell, really. It's a better story. And I also will say that I think that for Jon Moxley, what's kind of a blessing in disguise is that his bad title run has done good, because now he's the ultimate villain. So it's going to create the ultimate catharsis to actually see him, not hold the title anymore longer, really. I think that that's kind of would be a cathartic moment. And remember what Vince McMahon said in his documentary, which is professional wrestling is best with a catharsis. It's almost like, lack of a better example, it reminds me of the episode of the Cleveland Show where Cleveland wants to bang his wife, really, and then Ryla keeps getting in the way, and then Ryla's like, mom ain't happy because he realizes that mom needs to be satisfied, and then he says, what, I'm gonna step back and I'm gonna let Cleveland smash. And then Cleveland's like, second that Ryla said, I'm going to let you smash, he smashed. So that's really, really true about, about like wrestling and everything like that. You got to just create the catharsis. And ultimately, when you don't create that catharsis or that type of, things can get better, you destroy the optimism. So I think that there's just it does look more good. These are like the good reasons. And I want to talk about the detriments a little bit. I think that I do agree it's going to really hurt the company a lot, because I think there's two things you have to say. What is the direction of AEW if you do not have Hangman Adam Page be the champion because you're gonna say like, okay, is it gonna be Darby? How long are we gonna have this really? And then you want to go into your summer shows very very strong. You want to have a lot of optimism really, and it's a little bad because right now what they're doing is they're doing residencies, so you have to do something that's going to change the company really. Moxley's not been working. Um, this was actually AEW. I would say Double or Nothing is actually your best show this year. It is your best show this year because mainly outside of the bad build, um, the main event is what made the show really versus the main event of Revolution earlier this year. So so I would really kind of say that it's evidential that Hangman will be a box office draw. It's evidential that um, I think that down the road he has a lot of great opponents versus like what you saw with John Moxley because it's almost like his first heavyweight championship defense was against Orange Cassidy, and then you had like the people who against John Moxley who were like the Dark Order, Satnam Singh, Jeff Jarrett, like people who just really didn't matter really. So I think that that's another big issue. I think like Moxley just represents a lot of just like problems with AEW and bad booking, bad storytelling, and stubbornness, and maybe in a way just I want things to be done in a certain way, or I don't really care about the quality. Like I'm just not going to change my plan. Um, and then I also will say that with Hangman, you kind of look at him and you say, look at all the opponents that he has. He can fight. If you turn Osprey heel and he joins the Don Callis family again, you have all the members of the John Callis family who can have great matches with with um, with Hangman and Page. You also have Kenny Omega versus Adam Page. Like that could be a really great match. And then also you have Swerve, and then you have even like Gabe Kidd, and then also too you can do Will Ospreay again. You can even do something where it's like the Young Bucks versus Hangman and Page, like 2-on-1 match. Or you can do like Mark Briscoe versus Adam Page or Anthony Bowens, like try to find that next type of, young talent really, or Kyle Fletcher. There's just so much you can do with Adam Page, and there's matches that people would want to see because the thing with Adam Page, he has kind of like that, that I don't give up. And also, I've said this about Adam Page, that we feel for him, and he can honestly be like a Steve Austin more than way more than somebody like Moxley. Really, I just think with Moxley, um, we try to it's run its course really, but I think with Hangman and Page, it's like what we said. I think he is kind of like the Cody Rhodes. What people say he is like the Cody Rhodes of AEW. He's that very complicated character. He needs to finish the story. He needs to like overcome really, and it's going to be really really beautiful. Um, yeah, so there's definitely a lot of talking points, but I really think that the big thing, and I think the theme of AEW this year is the pivot, and I think that needs to say, and that's kind of like what will the issue with AEW. Like, do we want to wait until Darby Allin comes back really, or do we want to say, hey, you know what, we got to make some changes, we got to think about profits, we got to think about money, we got to think about making people go home happy. So is Moxley versus Hangman, and Hangman winning, is that the most profitable for our company? Is that the best pivot, or are we gonna be very very stubborn and we're gonna have Darby Allin win it in Washington, and then we're gonna have like Sting come out and rescue and save the day again, help save the day, when that's actually been like the same old shit really. I just think that wholeheartedly that getting the title off of Moxley, give him a couple of months off, or you set up something where Eddie Kingston returns and he helps Adam Page win, and then you can do Adam Page versus Eddie Kingston, and then you can set up a Kingston versus Moxley feud. There's something within that. So I just think for better booking, for better storytelling, for a character that people care about, for a WrestleMania type of moment, and to be different from the WWE, and to learn from companies like TNA Wrestling, where they've had opportunities to be alternative to WWE and be a draw. Like this is this is time for them to pivot and ultimately just remember that learn from TNA wrestling, which is that I don't think AEW is ever going to beat WWE, but it needs to be that alternative. It needs to be that long lasting alternative. Learn from history to say when you have the right moment, you strike while the iron is hot, really. As Tarantino said, that it's almost like a rubber band. Like sometimes you have the tension really, really big, and you gotta release, create that catharsis, really, and then you have something great, really. So I do pray that AEW will do the right thing. It should be the Cowboy in Texas winning. It really writes itself. It is the match to have. And the only way that Hangman should not win is if he gets injured and they have to put Will Ospreay in that spot. But otherwise, you know what? This is the right time for him to win the title. If you want to just hold off to Darby Allin, that's going to really hurt a lot of things. I don't think it'll necessarily kill the company, but it would just be like, they just can't get their shit together. It's going to be like, it would be just like AEW. It would just be like TNA Lockdown in 2014 when WWE's pissing off a lot of people and they had a chance to make a really great show, but they chose to kind of make it a very Vince Russo type of thing, really, So hopefully they learn to understand that, this is the best, this is really the future of AEW comes down to what they do in All In with Hangman Adam Page, really. And this could get them out of this CM Punk leaving muck. And this can also get them out of this Death Rider muck, really, because it really can be an end of an era, really. It can be like a renaissance for AEW, and they need to go back to that. So I pray that they do that, and Tony Khan has to understand that really the purpose of AEW has always really been being an alternative to WWE and looking at the failures of WWE and doing a better job. So ultimately, the failure of what they're doing now is they're getting to John Cena, and it's the same old shit, really. It's not. It's a nostalgia trip. So do you want to Mox? Do you want to do the TNA wrestling thing and just keep the title on Moxley, a guy who doesn't have the charisma that he should, really, and also just give it to the ex-WWE people, or do you want to actually say, hey, well, Hangman is going on this great story, redemption arc. Let's learn from TNA wrestling. Let's learn from WCW, and let's give him what he deserves, really. Or what's going to happen at the Royal Rumble next year? You're going to see Hangman Adam Page join WWE, and then he sucks Cody Rhodes' dick, and then he sucks Triple H's dick, and then he gets a big push in WWE afterwards. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. So I hope that for the future of AEW, that they put the title on Hangman Adam Page, and he is the champion at All In. This is definitely the biggest moment of AEW, and this is a big turning point. This will definitely end the CM Punk post CM Punk era of AEW if they put the title on Adam Page. It will be like the new Optimism era, and hopefully they do that.